Just start. Miffy's going to be our host tonight, the hostess with the absolute mostest, but I'm just going to do a quick acknowledgement of country. And I just want to say that Treading Lightly acknowledges the land that we're all meeting on today. And if you want to quickly type in what, where you're from, we're here on Yuin country, being the country of the Durga language group. Yeah, we just want to say that we acknowledge and respect the people, the culture and the values of this land that have been nurtured and managed for tens and thousands of years so that we can learn to continue and support this practice. And we hope that tonight, some of this information that we share helps to support that intention as well, and support this care for country. So
thanks, Moni. Thanks, Moni, and welcome everyone, and thanks so much for joining us. Today is World Energy Efficiency Day. It's a great day to start these conversations, and I know I have lots of questions about this, so I'm hoping today to get some of my questions answered and some of yours too. Today we'll be touching on where we source our power. We're going to talk about solar, batteries and virtual power plants. We don't know the answers. We aren't promoting any company or energy provider. We just want to start the conversation tonight, and it'll just be a start because these are really big topics and we won't be able to dive deep into them all right now. So as you can see, we're using Zoom technology. We'd love you to keep your cameras on if you feel comfortable. We'll be using the chat function. Good to see that's already happening in the UN. And we are recording this session, so just to let you know. I also want to really acknowledge that there's lots of you out there who are probably more expert on this topic than us. So if you do want to contribute some information to the session, or if you've got any questions at all, please do type this in the chat and we're going to do our best to cover it throughout the night. So very excitedly, we've got a great panel with us tonight of varied guests, and I'd like to introduce to you, although you probably all know her, Amanda Finlay, who's an early adopter, long-term environmental activist, Greens member, and our wonderful Mayor of the Shoalhaven City. Welcome, Amanda.
Thanks for that lovely intro, and hi, everybody.
We've also got Ian Stevens. He's a member of the Milton RFS. He's a passionate local early adopter of emission-free technology, and he's going to share his personal experience on what has worked for him. Welcome, Ian.
Thanks, Miffy.
And from Bateman's Bay, we've got Luke Dallack. He's the Regional Manager of Solar Hub, South Coast. He's based in the Bay. Luke's got a degree in Population Health, Human Geography, and he's worked for the ACT government in the Next Generation Battery Program. So Luke's got a heap of information to share with us tonight. So thanks for joining us, Luke, and welcome.
Hi guys, happy to be here.
And I don't think Monica Mudge needs any introduction. She's the president and founder of Treading Lightly, and she's going to give us her local perspective as well. Welcome, Moni.
Thank you, Miffy.
And I'm the vice president of Treading Lightly. And tonight I've got Dean Howcroft. He's my wingman. He wants to be called Goose from now on, helping me with the technology.
Thanks, Miff.
You're welcome.
Good to be here.
Okay, so before we get into the technology side of this session, we should start by pointing out that we can all be more energy efficient at home. So I'm going to go to each of our panelists now and ask, what is your top tip for reducing energy consumption at home? And I'm going to go to you first, Amanda. Top tip.
Top tip is check your insulation. You may think you've got it, but you need to keep on fluffing it up and getting new stuff and not just letting it get more and more compressed. And don't fill your kettle up all the way. If you only want 1 cup of coffee, put 1 cup of water in.
If Sandy was here, who's on our committee, oh my gosh, she would be loving you right now. That's her thing.
So true, so true. What about you, Luke? What's your top tip for energy efficiency around the home?
My top tip is using heat pumps or air conditioners for heating. So often people get out that old oil heater to heat a room, but air conditioning provides 4 times the amount of heat for about a quarter of the amount of energy required. So that would be my tip, to use that aircon and invest in a good one if you can afford to do so, because you'll save some money doing it.
Great tip. Thank you, Luke. What about you, Ian? What's your top tip?
Yeah, my top tip is to be conscious of where you're using electricity. There are cheap meters that are available from Bunnings for about $20 that you can plug into a power point and then plug your appliance into, and it'll tell you how much in watts that appliance is actually using. One example that we found was a towel warming rack that uses 300 watts, but it was on 24 hours a day. So 300 watts by 24 hours was actually 7.2 kilowatt hours per day, an incredible usage of electricity.
Yeah, that's pretty wasteful. That's another great tip. Thank you, Ian. And Moni, what's your top tip?
Well, don't have kids because they use a lot of power. But if you do have kids, yeah, it's really about educating them, you know, and educating ourselves as a family is where our power comes from, showing them like where it comes from the start to where it actually hits the power point, and just encouraging them to know, you know, how important it is to, you know, look after our fossil fuels and not use them and turn power off where we can. And if you have a stove that you use, a combustion heater or anything, make sure you chuck a kettle or something on there, or a pot of hot water to do your dishes with, things like that, because that can really help save some power too. You don't even have to turn the kettle on.
Yeah, you don't need your father's measuring cup next to the kettle, Jules. That's another great one. My father-in-law's a bit the same. He just fills the whole kettle and boils it and then lets it get cold. Anyone else out in the audience got any tips they want to type into chat? My tip is to ask your husband to open the blinds in the morning instead of turning on all the lights. You got any, Dean?
Yeah, mine are to turn the lights off. I'm always telling kids, if you're not in the room, turn the lights off, turn them off, and shut the blinds or open the blinds, whether it's winter or summer, to keep the house warm or cool.
All right. No other tips from the crowd? Sandy's here now. She did a great post on Treading Lightly's page today with more tips, so she's probably covered them all there.
So, yeah, we got to wear layers, yes, instead of flicking on the switch for the heater, and use the sun to dry your clothes. It's from Mel and Jules.
Love it.
As in solar power or the actual sun? Both, maybe.
Hey, there you go.
She says the washing line, Luke. I think that's fair enough.
Yep, I agree.
Probably a better idea.
Okay, blankets are great. Agreed. Before you turn the heater on. Okay, so before we talk about solar or battery solutions, we wanted to quickly touch on energy providers, because even with solar, most of us are still going to be buying some energy from the grid. There's many energy providers out there. So in the chat, we're just interested, who do you buy your power from? Type in your company. There's so many out there. No, there's a Red Energy. What else we got, Dean?
Power Shop, Origin, but considering Nova. I haven't heard of that one. Origin, it's popular. Yeah, Power Shop again, Origin.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, really interesting. Wombat, who's Nectar? Feel free to come off mute and tell us. Or keep typing.
He's got a crazy house full of kids, so.
Fair enough. Okay, so as you can see here, there's lots of electricity companies out there, many claiming to be green. It can be really confusing about who to go with. So what should we be looking for in an energy provider? Moni, I know that you've recently gone through this decision-making process. Can you share with us some of the things you looked for and took into consideration?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a while now, actually. It hasn't been recently. I wish I probably need to go through the process again, which is one of my tips, is like to keep checking and updating that information that you may have previously got. But we're with Red Energy. Some of the questions that we asked, one of the big ones for me was like, who owns the company, who owns the energy provider? So I know that Red Energy is a wholly Australian owned company. So I know that, you know, the profits are staying in the country, which for me is really important. And also just asking things like, how long will my contract be? Obviously pricing for some people is really important. you know, do they provide, what's their commitment to renewable energies? And if they do have green energy, which was one of the reasons we went with red energy, because they're very much associated with the snowy hydro, where their green energy comes from. Yeah, so there's like I'm sure that most people on this panel, in this Zoom chat at the moment, will be doing all of those things. I'm sure there's other things that you can suggest as well, but there's some of the main things. And obviously, things like what will happen if I install more solar or add solar. So there's some of the things that I asked when I was looking.
I'm sure Luke will talk to feed-ins and tariffs when we get to the solar section as well, because that's another hot topic, and what each company provides is very different.
Yeah.
So Amanda, I'm going to come to you now. We've all read excitedly about the new solar farm planned for Nowra. Can you tell us some more about this? And does it mean that we're all going to be able to buy locally produced green power in the future?
Oh, I so wish, Miffy, that the answer was yes. And I'm going to tell a little bit of backstory, because not many people know this part of it. But in 2017, the Shoalhaven Greens, with a whole bunch of other people, got together and held a zero emission Shoalhaven forum. And from that, a small working party was born to work on this idea about solar farms for the Shoalhaven. Then 2 years later, we got some arena funding and worked with Byron Bay Council and 2 other councils to look at how could we make a socially just model that would provide, you know, cheap power for people who are, say, living in housing commission homes, or however it works. We've got a massive amount of housing commission up in Nowra, and through that arena funding, we were able to work through all of the issues that face a community solar farm. We ironed some of the problems out, but what we did find out was that we couldn't give direct billing to people. And so what we've got today is a 4 megawatt solar farm up in Nowra on the land next to, it's a 3 megawatt solar farm worth $5 million up on the land near the animal shelter. And the majority of that power is going to meet the commitment of the City of Sydney's 100% renewable targets. So even though we can't buy it, it's actually a really good news story for renewable energies and local government, because it shows that here's a whopping big local government area that is totally committed to its targets and is going to be getting that electricity through flow power. But what I am hoping that we can do is, in the next phase of council, is to get another one of these up and running up on the old tip site at North Nowra, and hopefully by that time we'll be able to work through what the billing issues are and then be able to offer Shoalhaven produced power locally. But at this point, it's the back end of billing that's making it really hard.
And is there a time frame?
No,
Okay.
Not for the second one, but the first. So they've started the first one in Nowra, and they're well into the construction, and they're hoping that it will either be finished before December, or all well, good and well. But if there's any inclement weather, then in early January, they'll be looking at that too. So the other ones who are able to get that, that's the City of Sydney power, is people like the Sydney Opera House and Westpac in Sydney and the Flinders Port. There's a whole bunch of people who are coming into that on a power sharing, on a power agreement.
Any
heats in.
Any questions for Amanda before we move on? Or any questions in general about power companies?
I'll just make a quick comment. There's a good energy website called energymadeeasy.gov.au that tries to sort of figure out what plan is best for each household based on a few inputs that you can put in. The market's changing every day. There's a new electricity plan to come on board, so it really is specific to each and every household, whether you've got solar, whether you've got batteries, how much energy you use at what times of the day. So speaking to someone that's sort of looking at your bills that really knows what they're talking about is often the best advice that you can get specific to you. But energymadeeasy.gov.au is a good website to start on.
And we're going to collate all this information and send it out to you afterwards as well. Thanks for the question, Ruth. Any other questions before we move on to solar? No. Okay, so if we don't want to be relying on external power, we want to be self-sufficient, yay, let's install solar. Just wanted to, there's a Zoom poll going to appear on your screen now. We just want to get a feel for how many people already have solar or are thinking about it. Any minute now, like magic, the poll will come up.
Yeah, they're voting.
Good, Goose?
They're voting. You can't see them, yeah.
Huh.
So we got 25% saying yes. Sorry, 75% saying yes, 25% saying no. Who already has solar at home? That's a good result. 75% already have it.
Done, everyone.
That's
Yes.
awesome. I think everyone's on here to learn more about VPPs. So Ian, you've embraced solar power, you've got battery storage, you've got an electric vehicle, which we don't have time to talk about tonight, but I'm very keen to learn more about that personally. Can you, Ian, please tell us briefly about your setup? How many panels have you got? What's your biggest power uses at home? Are you generating enough electricity from your solar to cover all your needs?
Yeah, we've got 32 kilowatts, 32 panels, which is a 11 kilowatt system. That runs flat out in summer, but it doesn't generate enough in winter. The 11 kilowatts of panels goes through an 8.2 kilowatt inverter, and then we've got a 13.5 kilowatt AC coupled battery. Our biggest loads, the car is by far the biggest one. It's that was probably our first big foray into going green with a big investment. So we've got a Tesla Model S, one of the very first ones that came into the country, and it uses about 1 kilowatt for every six kilometres that's driven, which sounds like a lot, but if you convert that into the amount of electricity, if you were buying it to go 100 kilometres, it's about $5 to go 100 kilometres. So it's a very, very cheap way of driving. Our second biggest load is our swimming pool pump. And we know that there are cheaper, more efficient pumps that are available out there on the marketplace. But I'm always conscious of throwing out things that are working well. So I'm going to stick with it until it fails. And then when it does fail, I'll replace it with a much more efficient model. On average, we use about 32 kilowatt hours of electricity per day. That's quite a lot. Driven, as I said, largely by the car. No pun intended. And when measured over the course of a year, we actually export slightly more energy than we import, but it is very much seasonally driven. So in the summertime, we only have a single phase electricity line, a grid line that comes in. So in summertime, we can only export up to 5 kilowatt hours at a time, 5 kilowatts at any time, back into the grid. So if we expanded our solar array to cover the shortfall that we have in winter, we actually couldn't export the excess that we would generate in summer, and it would just go to ground. So whilst I'd love to go off grid, and whilst I can, I'm very proud of the fact to say that we're net positive when measured over a year. We're not net positive every month of the year yet. So it's some way of the way there, but not all of the way there.
Maybe a community virtual power plant might be the solution to you there.
It might be.
Luke, you're a solar provider, and there's many out there. Can you share your perspective? A lot of the registration questions came through on what can consumers look for when they're trying to choose a solar provider?
Yeah, it's fortunately the solar industry is a pretty messy little industry of lots of marketing tactics and subcontracting work going on. So it's a bit of a maze. So take your time. It's a big investment. It's going to be up on your house for 25 years plus, hopefully. So take your time. Don't try to just get 2 quotes straight away and not ask any questions and just go for it. Just it's a big investment. Take your time. Ask lots of questions, and ideally you're going with a local company with a shop front, somewhere you can walk into and have a chat to the team. And I like the model that does not use subcontractors to do the work. So you're getting guys that work for Solar Hub, for instance, that are doing solar and batteries day in, day out. If there was ever an issue down the line, you can actually talk to the same guys working for the same company, and they're all locals that you see at your coffee shop every other day. So they're really important, and just, you know, a quick Google review and looking at the reviews always is a sort of, you know, everyone does that these days, I guess. So, you know, doing that is also worthwhile. But, you know, looking at how long the company's been around, asking around your neighbours and other people to hear about the experiences they've had, and just, you know, asking a lot of questions to that company, making sure that, you know, they're invested in what's best for you. They're not just trying to sell a product. We like to think here at Solar Hub that, you know, we're really trying to get the best for the customer, regardless of whether that's making us money or not. So it's just local company, shop front, someone to walk into. Try to steer clear of the subcontracting model where they sell something and then Joe Blow from Sydney or wherever comes and does the work, because often they don't really have that accountability to do a really good job, which is unfortunate. Sometimes you might get a good result, but go local, do your research, ask lots of questions is my advice.
And Luke, can you tell us about the New South Wales government's plan to help lower income families install solar?
Yeah, so for pensioners in New South Wales, if you've got a pension card and own your own home and you don't already have solar, you can actually get a free 3 kilowatt solar system at the moment. So you jump on energy.newsouthwales.gov.au. I think Judy's got a link there, or I can send a link if anyone wants to email me, and you actually apply on a New South Wales government website. You can get a free 3 kilowatt solar system anywhere in New South Wales. There's 3 providers that are installing for the New South Wales government under that program. Solar Hub is installing from Durras to Eden. Origin Energy are installing from Durras to North Wollongong, and then SAE Group are installing from sort of Central Coast up to Tweed Heads. It's a fantastic program, and a lot of people ask, oh, I don't want 3 kilowatts. 3 kilowatts is pretty small. I want 10 or 11 or what have you, like Ian's got. And you can actually get larger systems under the program. You just pay the difference. So, you know, a 3 kilowatt system is worth, you know, anywhere between sort of $3,500 and $5,000, and you'll essentially get about that much off any system you like. So it's a fantastic program to be part of.
That seems pretty fair. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions around solar? When please type them in the chat, and we've got time to answer some of them now. When you guys registered, we've got a couple of questions, Luke, or anyone can answer this. How do you get the most out of your solar? We've got panels, but we're only saving about $80 a quarter on a $700 bill. So
that savings on your bill and that credit that you see on your bill, that's for the excess power sold back to the grid, and you get a feed-in tariff for that. So you get, you know, anywhere from 5 cents to 21 cents with Origin a short time ago. Those feed-in tariffs are coming down very fast at the moment. So you'll find that, you know, getting 10 cents or around about that is considered good these days. But what you don't see on your electricity bill is the solar that you've self-consumed during the day. So that solar self-consumed during the day is at a value of about 32 cents per kilowatt hour on average. So you won't see it on your bill, but you've actually saved more than you think you have, because you've self-consumed that solar and not have to buy it from the grid, and then your excess you've sold to the grid for a little bit, generally, 10 to 15% of what you're buying it back for at night.
So do your dishwashing and your washing during the day.
When the sun's up, use your power and try to get things done when the sun's shining to get that solar self-consumption saving.
Dean, anything in the chat before we move on to batteries?
Yeah, so Wombat just asked if we can go off-grid in the Shoalhaven. Amanda just said, yeah, she's off-grid in Milton. Does anyone want to expand on that, or?
Yeah, I'd love to go off-grid if I could.
The idea of off-grid is great. I want to go off-grid too, but in terms of the amount spent and your return on investment, it makes sense to stay on grid and sell that excess power, not to mention have power available when the sun goes down. Unless you want to spend a lot of money on batteries, it often makes a lot more financial sense to stay connected to the grid and make a bit more pocket cash on the side. The general rule of thumb is in my industry is if you're paying $30,000 to get power connected to a rural site, then it's worthwhile going off grid. But any less, you're actually should be prepared to pay to get that electricity connection, get solar and or batteries, and be in a better off position. But there's definitely situations where off grid is the way to go.
Okay, more questions I see.
Yeah, so Kim's asking, how do you expand in the future? So how do you future-proof? So if you want to add an electric vehicle down the track, and we're going to go into batteries, but she was asking about battery storage units and how do they fit into the planning? Yeah,
great question. So starts with solar. A big solar system is going to give you the best chance of getting that solar self-consumption that goes straight into your electric vehicle. There are inverters on the market that do direct current charging. There's only one inverter on the market that does electric vehicle charging straight from your solar, but you can buy solar and then purchase a car charger that is just essentially like plugging in an appliance. If you plug in the appliance, being your electric car during the day, then you're getting a free charge off your solar system. A lot of solar companies can also install these car chargers, that some are slow trickle chargers and some are faster chargers. So it's just about being realistic about how long it's going to take to charge a car from dead to full, and whether you want to sort of get that installed with your solar system at the same time, or whether you want to do it in a sort of staged process. But it starts off with a large solar system, really.
Great. Isabel's asking, so she's brought in a house with existing solar already installed, and she just wanted to know, how do you find out the size of the system and whether she can add to it?
Yeah. So you'd be looking at the side of the inverter and trying to get as much information of the system from that little inverter on the wall next to your meter box usually, or just call a solar provider and send some pictures through, or have a chat, and we'll be able to figure it out pretty quick.
So it's not just counting your number of panels. That was a fair point.
You can count the number of panels, but what wattage are those panels? So we're pretty good at guessing what wattage panels are from looking at recent aerial imaging, but we usually come out to site for a site visit if we quote, so we'll quickly figure out exactly how big it is then.
And Luke, Emily's asking me too, do you need to clean your panels? Amanda, are you up on your roof cleaning your panels every month?
No way. Although when Glenn's installed these panels, when people come to our place, they go, why on earth have you panels at that tilt? And that was about self-cleaning. And it was the same with our hot water system. We've got the evacuated tubes, and most people come around, they scratch their heads at this evacuated tube system that sits up, this high. but what it is actually set for is to grab the winter sun in the west rather than the summer sun. So, our hot water, go figure, our hot water in summer is actually cooler than our winter hot water, which is then boosted by another fireplace. So, yeah.
Wow.
It's getting the tilt right and not mounting them, I don't know, Luke would probably disagree, but when they were flat mounted to the roof and the roof was at the wrong pitch, they were gathering leaves in the back and they were getting really mucky, but not anymore.
Yeah, the perfect azimuth to the sun around here in the South Coast region is 30 degrees tilted. Most roofs have got a 22.5 degree pitch. So the general rule of thumb is 10 degrees or more and they're self-cleaning. When it rains, the panels get cleaned. For any system that we install that's flat or 5 degree pitch, for instance, we often still do install them flat because it's more cost effective to put more panels flat than less panels on tilts. But for different houses, you get different solutions. So general rule of thumb is over 10 degrees, they'll self-clean. If they're under 10 degrees, in our package, we'll recommend cleaning at least annually. And that's just simply with a hose, and we don't recommend our customers to go up there on the roof themselves, but to get someone up there with a brush and some warm soapy water or simply a hose. It's depending on where you are. So if you're on a dirt road, your panels are going to build up with dust regularly. But if you're in suburban area, the panels stay pretty clean and they're pretty good at generating a lot of power, even with thick ash sludge from the fires, for instance. We've got panel level monitoring on a lot of our systems, and we found that they were still producing really well, even with thick ash on top of some of them. So,
Okay.
I can contest to the fact that we actually do get up and clean our panels at least once a year, maybe sometimes twice, because we've got some big turpentines that drop a lot of like it almost looks like ash on our panels, and it does make a huge difference. We notice immediately, like the day after we've cleaned them, the increase in the solar that we produce when we've done that. So yeah, it does make a bit of a difference.
That's awesome. We've got another very complicated question for Luke, which he might want to answer afterwards.
I will. Yeah, I've just read it, Ruth, and it's a common occurrence on the South Coast, high voltage. When an inverter or when you get voltage over 258 volts, the smart inverters or inverters installed in the last few years really automatically turn off as a safety precaution. So on the South Coast, we get a lot of high voltage, and often it's got to do with some poor wiring or network instability. But the first point of contact is to contact your energy provider. So it's not your retailer in this sense. It's the poles and wires company. So from North Durras to Wollongong, you're on the Endeavour Energy network. You'd be contacting Endeavour Energy and say, hey, every day I pay a supply charge on my electricity bill. I need safe power. Come and fix it. And they should jump onto it and come out immediately, especially if it's 260 volts. It's very unsafe. So you might have appliances blowing up and things frizzing out more often than not. The safe voltage down here is 230 volts. So anywhere between 235 and 245 is considered nice, stable electricity supply. But anything over 252 and your inverter is actually starting to throttle down and produce less as a safety precaution. And then when it goes over 258, it'll turn itself off. So that's savings that you're not making.
Yeah, wow.
So contact your energy network provider first and go from there.
Great answer. Thank you, Luke. We might move on to batteries, although Kim's got another question about the direction of the panels. West sounds good. I'd heard installing in the west is being encouraged to even out the power to grid now too, as north and east have been favoured previously. Is any truth in that?
Yeah, it's all about trying to maximise that self-consumption, right? So with a solar system, you'll get a nice cool monitoring thing that you can see when you're producing power. And if you're using a lot in the afternoon, then favour the west side a little bit more. If you're using a lot in the morning, then you want some panels on the east side. And annually, putting panels dead north will produce the most power overall. But what you're really trying to do is get that self-consumption. First cup of tea in the morning, you want a little bit of sun hitting those panels, so your cup of tea is for free. That kettle boiling is for free. And ideally in the afternoon, the same thing. So often an east-west split will save you more money than a straight north system. But it really depends on shade, your roof, a lot of other factors. So it's just different for each household.
So interesting. Which way do yours face, Ian?
Ours are entirely north facing, and putting some on the shed which faces west and never gets any overshading by trees is something that we might look into in the future.
That's pretty cool. Okay, on to batteries. You're going to see another poll on your screen now, just to get a feel for who's thinking about battery system in the next couple of years. Batteries are a hot topic in our house, and they have been for a couple of years. What's the audience say, Dean?
9% already have a battery system. 40% are thinking about getting a battery system in the next little while. 50% are considering getting a battery system one day, and the lonely 4% unlikely to get a battery.
Okay, so everyone like me have been thinking about it. We keep waiting for the batteries to get better, for the batteries to get cheaper, for the batteries to last longer. I know John asked a question in the chat about, end of life of batteries. Luke, should we just bite the bullet and get one now?
Most of the time, yes. But again, it's unique to each individual and how they use energy and how much solar they've got and how much savings you've got to purchase one, because it's not a quick payback. It's anywhere between sort of 6 and 8 years is the average at the moment. But it really does differ for each and every household. So get your bills ready and make sure that solar company really analyses it and puts that return on investment calculation in the quote, because it does go up and down depending on your household's sort of behaviours. But typically, if you're using more than 15 to 20 kilowatt hours a day, a solar system and battery system will make sense and pay itself off within the warranty period of the battery and the solar. So.
And if it's more of a social environmental decision, less an economical decision?
That's right. Yeah, it's sort of you could wait until prices come down and there's more rebates available or what have you, but you're losing out if you don't just bite the bullet and start saving the environment and saving a bit of money and sleeping better at night. So they say everyone that's got a solar and battery system does sleep better, I think.
Is that so, Ian? Tell us about your battery system. What have your outcomes been? And I know you were through the Currawong fires like the rest of us. Tell us about your experience there.
Yeah, we live a little forest. And we were smashed by the Currawong fire on New Year's Eve in 2019. We managed to defend our house. Unfortunately, a few other people on this call in Little Forest did not fare so well, sadly. The power was lost to the whole street before the main fire front hit. But we did not lose power at all. We were 23 days off grid. Each day we would drive to the fire station, get out on the fire truck, do a 12 to 16 hour shift, be absolutely buggered by the time we got home, and to be able to come into the house to be able to turn the lights on, to be able to get something to eat, to be able to just do all of the things that you do normally, was just extraordinary. If we didn't have that and had to come home each day to the alternative, to put a house without electricity, would have just been awful. So it's I think one of the things Luke mentioned, that we have some flaky electricity here in our area, and that's very true of Little Forest. We've actually, the battery at our place has actually kicked in 46 times to cover electricity outages, with 605 hours of blackouts averted. So to me, that's a big benefit on top of the financial and green benefits that we got it all from. So I think our priorities were initially to be green, secondly to ensure that, as long as it was reasonably financially beneficial, then we were okay with it. But then this benefit of covering outages was an unexpected benefit, and probably one that in hindsight I'd rate a lot higher.
It must have been a blessing to come home to after the fires, and you know, it's so sad to see so many people on the call who lost everything in those fires. We've got a lot of questions. Amanda, I'm going to go to you now. You're completely off grid, but I actually wanted to ask the question about the construction of batteries and the disposal of batteries at end of life, because you seem to know a little bit about that. Can you share that?
I can only share my personal experience on this one, Miffy, because I really don't know a lot about the modern batteries. So we chose, because we've been off the grid now in Milton for 4 years, and prior to that, a family have had off-grid systems out in the bush for quite a long time. So we knew really well the lead acid batteries and how well they performed and how long that they would last. And so instead of waiting for new technology, we just decided to go straight for lead acid, because we knew that they could be recycled pretty well in the current system, and that there was no barrier to the recycling of nearly every part of those components. So that's why we made that choice then, was rather than wait. But Ian, we only have about 80 ampere hours on about a 4 kilowatt system here, and I think I've got 3 to 4 days worth of power if there's no sunshine, but that does not run the electric car, and I'm around begging off mum and dad who have got a switch that they've got batteries of their place, and they use the batteries, and if there's no sun, they've got a switching system that can take them back to the grid if they need to use grid power.
I know Ruth's got an electric car. She's asking when a car's going to act as house batteries. Luke?
Good question, Ruth. It's more about the policy and framework, and the energy companies and retailers trying to position themselves well enough than the actual technology being available. The Nissan Leaf has a bi-directional AC charging and discharging function that costs upwards of $15,000, I think. So you may as well just get a battery. But that technology is always improving. My guess would be 5 years and we'll be there. There'll be a sort of off the shelf product that you can sort of add on to your EV, or it might come with your EV, that would turn this battery over here into a battery on wheels that you can come and park and run your house, and you can also be drawn upon in an outage as well, potentially. So it's exciting times, but I think we're at least 5 years away of having a solution that sort of makes sense to jump onto. That's my guess.
Quick in the chat, if you want us to run one of these sessions on electric vehicles, type yes or no quickly. Luke, does that sort of ties into, like, we've had questions about folks who rent. Are there any options to rent solar panels or batteries?
No, there's not, unfortunately, and that's the demographic that misses out. And there's different policy frameworks, like Amanda sort of touched on solar gardens, like, you know, all your tax rates and things going into purchasing solar panels that you get a saving on your bill from. There's a few different models happening in Canberra that they're sort of piloting, but it's a tricky one for renters. My suggestion is to contact your landlord and see if they'd pitch in for solar and or batteries, depending on how long your lease is. But yeah, unfortunately, that's a demographic that misses out. If there is solar on already, there is an emerging market with portable lithium batteries. Now, you know, having a portable lithium battery that you can plug your fridge into and plug different things into still allows you to get those savings from your solar on your roof at night time if you're renting. And then when you move, you can take that battery with you. So that market's a fast evolving market. If any of the listeners today want more information on that, just shoot me an email and I can point you in the right direction in terms of the sort of most innovative products coming to our Australian shores in the next few months. So that's an option for renters or anyone that wants to take their power with them. But yeah, renters are unfortunately a market that miss out.
Yeah, that's really hard. There's lots of comments coming through on the chat. Before we let's talk about them before we move on to the virtual power plants. Dana, Solar Edge, are they releasing their own battery to couple with the inverters?
Yep.
That's a big yes. That's good because I know you're building a house, Dana. Ollie's asking about the opportunity for a community battery in our area, and everyone wants Luke's email address. Community battery in our area, Ollie, that will bring us onto virtual power plants, I think. So we're going to play you a really short video now about a virtual power plant that's been set up in Maloney's Beach down south. So bear with me while I share this, and then we'll have a bit of time at the end to talk through this as an option.
Steve Atkins. My wife Rosie and I moved here as a retirement home for us. We arrived in the middle of the bushfire season. We had the fires around the bay in New Year and also in January. We had a lot of power outages. And I discovered what Shoalhaven had been doing with Reposit in some trials for a virtual power plant in Canberra. And that got me thinking not just about what we were going to do, but what we could do as a community. The virtual power plant basically means that there's going to be up to 650 10 kilowatt hour batteries installed across this region. Using smart technology, they can combine together to provide grid stability. So that's a significant amount of power that you can provide at times of need. I came into the Solar Hub office in Batemans Bay and started talking to Luke about it. One of us was encouraged by the fact that my questions got answered, you know, and I wasn't just talking to a salesperson, you know, I was talking to a team that had some depth. Solar Hub are able to provide to us the subsidy that the New South Wales government is providing for people to become part of the virtual power plant for the southeast of New South Wales. And that program basically means that, you know, the New South Wales government is prepared to provide rebates if, one, you choose this solution through Solar Hub, and two, that you commit to be part of the virtual power plant. With that as a seed, I started thinking about, well, perhaps that's the solution for communities like ours, where we can be more self-reliant by putting our own solar panels in and our own battery, but also being more community-minded as well, because if we can do something to stabilise the grid and provide power when it's necessary for that purpose, then we're not just helping ourselves directly, we're also helping the community.
Okay, I hope that you could hear that and see that okay. I don't know that
I guess that was a bit of an ad for Solar Hub. We do apologise, but it painted a picture on the virtual power plant sort of idea.
Yeah, and it's so cool. I heard that it's happening in Durras as well. It'd be great if we saw
New South Wales wide, so up in Milton and Ulladulla too.
Really?
Yep.
Streets are signing up to this in Milton and Ulladulla.
It's individual households that are all connected on the national electricity market. So you're actually connecting to a virtual power plant that covers the whole Australian eastern seaboard, from Tasmania to the tip of Queensland. So the idea of it is that all these batteries are connected via the internet, and at any 5-second interval, we can see how much dispatchable power all these batteries have the ability to go out to the grid and stabilise that voltage that we were talking about. So when you get high voltage or grid disruptances, you can actually push a bit of power out to the grid and stabilise that voltage and stop blackouts from occurring to begin with. So each and every household, anywhere you are in New South Wales, you can actually access a grant that discounts your battery to connect onto this virtual power plant. So it's only through Shoalhaven at the moment. We tendered for this grant from New South Wales government, and that just allows us to install smart batteries that all connect and pull together and allow that sort of stability to be accessed from the grid at any given point in time. It also allows our customers to produce more savings via when they push power out to the grid from their battery, when there's a high demand and a real need for it, you're actually getting $1 per kilowatt hour feed-in tariff instead of 5 cents or 10 cents. So it's financially rewarding and creates stability to that unstable grid. So it's ticking a lot of boxes.
So if I can save all my power and then send it back to the grid at night when everyone needs it, I'm going to get more money from them.
That's right. So in the last 2 years, our virtual power plant of all the batteries connected on the South Coast, which is over about 150 at the moment, but we've got about 2,000 that it connects to in Canberra. But out of all those batteries connected, only one event happened where they actually supported the grid at a real time of need. So it's just more about having those batteries there ready to play on the market, not necessarily playing and using your battery storage, but just access to that market that the New South Wales government and energy retailers and energy networks really value, having that sort of backup power there if needed. But to get a bit technical, the Australian National Electricity Market used to sell wholesale power to everyone for every 30-minute interval. All those coal generators, gas-fired generators, solar farms, wind farms competed on a market, on an auction, every 30 minutes. They bidded and the best bid won, and you guys get the average levelised cost on your bills. 4 days ago, that market changed from 30-minute window to a 5-minute window. So it's very well suited for batteries on a virtual power plant to now go, dispatch and beat that coal-fired station, and dispatch and beat that gas-fired station, and actually return the money to you guys that paid for the system and reduce power prices for everyone on the market. So,
and using green power, not the coal, which is really what we hear about at the end of the day.
So when you guys buy a battery and connect it to a virtual power plant, you're actually reducing the power price for your neighbour next door that doesn't even have solar or batteries.
I will say that was one of the main reasons that we haven't considered going onto a battery system yet, and that is because of that. We were talking about going to an environment, being environmentally conscious and aware. For us, that meant staying on the grid so we can push the power, because we make way more power than we use, pushing it back into the grid so we know that the power our neighbours are using hopefully is coming from us, maybe, rather than not using it and it pretty much going to waste. So
Totally. Luke, do you get a say in how much power you give to the grid?
You can adjust the settings on your battery to make sure that you've, for instance, got 50% of your battery power available in case of a blackout, and only allow 50% of your battery to be open to the market. But most people say, I'm buying power for 32 or 35 cents off the grid. I can sell it for $1, even if I have to sell it for $1 and then buy it back for 32 cents. I'm still 60-odd cents in front. So it sort of makes sense. Yeah.
So how much is the grant from the government versus how much the battery costs?
Yeah, good question. So at the moment, it depends on what setup you've got already. If you've got a solar setup with a specific inverter, the battery to add on is about 7,600. But then you've got backup and things like that to add on to, which ups the cost. That's after a $5,000 discount. But it really depends on the sort of setup, the installation, whether we need to put smoke alarms and fireproof the wall, and we make sure that that's a very safe battery installation. So it changes on every household, but obviously we go to each household and quote, and you get a customized option. The discount on each battery is actually related to the export that you can push out to the grid. So for Ian, for instance, he can only push out 5 kilowatts at any given point in time on a single phase network. So he could actually be eligible for a $5,000 discount on the battery. If you're out in the sticks and in the bush a bit and there was more high voltage and Endeavour Energy said you can only push out 3 kilowatts of power to the grid at any given point in time, the discount on the battery would be $3,000. So it is relative to how much that battery can deliver to the grid to support the grid.
Okay, I think I've got more questions than I started with, which is great because this was all about starting the conversation.
It is really complicated. Yeah.
It is. My husband will be in touch. We nearly finished now. I just wanted to make sure we had time at the end. Amanda, as our mayor, can you tell us council's vision for energy efficiency in the Shoalhaven? Kind of what's your wish for the next 5 or 10 years and what do you actually think is the reality?
So what I'll tell you, Miffy, is that I can tell you the policy position right now, and then I can tell you what I want to do. So the policy at the position at the moment is net zero by 2050. And so council's been working, pretty hard towards meeting those objectives, and lots of solar have gone on over the last couple of years. So that's great. And most of that solar is around water and water pumping, and particularly around wastewater. So every time we flush a toilet, that those pumps that run 24/7 to keep our waste moving to the waste stations, that's an expensive piece of kit, and council try and buy their energy at good times to offset that. But where do we want to go? So as I said, I want to make sure that we get another solar farm within the next 2 years in the Shoalhaven. We absolutely have to bring that net zero emissions down to the 2030 and not 2050, so that we can sit within the IPCC's recommendations to try and keep global warming at a reasonable sort of a level. The other thing that we've got coming that's really mind-blowing is we're going to have a biogas plant that's been installed in Nowra. That's been invested in by the federal government. I think over $1 million has gone into that. And that's taking all the cow poo from Tarera and all of those beautiful dairy farms in Nowra, converting that into gas and putting that back into the grid as well, and to reduce the emissions of those farmers who have got just slurry sitting around, off-gassing and being fugitive emissions. So it's great that that's going to be captured. But I've also recommended that through to, we've got a lot of microbreweries popping up in the Shoalhaven. So we can get our microbrewers to take their waste into that same biogas system. That'd be great. But if we can't, then let's get a small biogas plant to them, and let's look at how we can get the government to help offset those kind of emissions. So yeah, I think that we're on a really good trajectory, and I popped it in the chat. Endeavour Energy are doing a microgrid down at Bully Point. And if they pull that off, that's a $6 million project. We'll be encouraging them to do the same on all of our end of the line kind of villages to try and bring in those levels of redundancy, so that places like Conjola, Manyana, Bendalong, North Bendalong, don't have to go through that suffrage that we've been through in the past, because there's absolutely no reason why they can't, isolate parts of the grid, plug in generators to give them those people backup if they need it, but definitely going to those community batteries. So I'm really excited about a few of the things that are happening, but I'm also excited about changing that policy so that we can keep doing what the people of the Shoalhaven want us to do, and that is to protect our environment and drive down emissions.
That's so well said. Protect our environment and drive down emissions. And I think that's probably a great place to end because we're just at time now. Huge thank you to our panel for giving up their evening to spend with us and for sharing their experience and their wisdom. I think we could have talked for so much longer. I think we better do this again. I said at the beginning, it's only just the start of the conversation, and Judy's taken some great notes and she's going to send out some references and further reading in case you want to dig deeper. We've all got Luke's contact address, email address now too.
Happy to help, guys.
And yeah, there was lots of questions about wind turbines. Maybe that's a whole nother conversation we need to start as well. And I'm looking forward to the electric vehicle one. But just to let you know, Treading Lightly are planning more conversations like this in the future. We've got an event on the 23rd of October, which is going to be all about recycling. And it's going to star everyone's favourite rubbish expert, Wombat. So feel free to come on camera now and smile. And then after that, we will endeavour to have something on electric vehicles. And yeah, your suggestions through our membership is what we will focus on in the future. So huge thank you to our panel. Thank you to everyone for joining. Hey, Wombat.
There he is.
This will be the star of the next show. Bring your rubbish, talk to Wombat.
And thank you, Miffy and Monica, as well.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It's been awesome. I've learnt so much tonight.
I've learnt so much.
Thanks, Luke. You've given us all lots of food for thought. So
Pleasure, guys. Anytime.
And we're looking forward to you coming here and finding our best energy solutions at our new Treading Lightly hub as well. So
yeah, super keen. No worries.
Love that. So yeah, thank you. And thank you, Amanda, for taking out, this really valuable time, because I know how busy you are. So it's always a pleasure to have you on here. We're really grateful.
Oh, thank you. It's just been lovely to be able to hang out with community in this great virtual world that we've got, at the moment. Yeah.
Very exciting times. And Ian, thank you for sharing your personal story. I know you've got more to tell. I know you'd be busting to do that. And I just want to give a shout out here to Ian, who, worked really hard during the Currawin fires, and just want to acknowledge that as well. He was, pretty relentless. So thank you.
Thank you.
See you, everybody.
See you, everyone.
You, Judy.
Oh, and big thanks to my team, Miffy, Dean, Judy. I'm just so lucky to have you guys on this team. You're just phenomenal. I'm so grateful.
No, it was fun. Tell your friends. See you next time.
See ya.
See you.
See ya.
Yeah.